Hasn't it gone quiet? Wow. Good evening. Welcome. It's not exactly a Sundays at 7. It's a Sundays at 7 style Sundays at 7. And we thought, you know, it's a bank holiday. There won't be many people come to this. How wrong we were. I normally tell you a funny story. I truly haven't got one. But I'm a bit frustrated and fed up because we drove back recently from the south of England. And we had to stop on the car park. I think it's called the M6. And you know how the British are really good at queuing? Not that queuing. Queuing. Well, we were so fed up being just sat there doing nothing, sitting in the car. So we called in the motorway services. And we queued to get a place for the car. And then we went in, and I said, I need the loo. So I queued. 60 people I counted in front of me. And then I thought, I need to wash my hands because I'm a good boy. Only 2 of the hand dryers were working. So guess what? I queued. So I came out and I ordered a cup of coffee. And I got in a queue. And when I got to the front of the queue, I said, 2 coffees, please. She said, right, that'll be £9.75. I said, thank you, can I have the coffee now? No, you need to get in a queue. So you get in a queue, and I get to the front of the queue, and I got the coffee. I said, thank you very much. And I'm just going to find a place to sit. And somebody said, excuse me, you need to get in a queue. So I got in a queue to get a seat. This whole thing took us about an hour and a half. We then get back in the car. I needed petrol, so you had to get in a queue. And when I saw the petrol was £1.71 a litre, I thought, let's not queue. We'll be okay till we get home. So we got back in the queue on the M6. The journey took 7.5 hours. When we got home, Denise said to me, I am not doing the tea. You're doing the tea. I said, right, when I'm finished, get in the queue. Oh. This is a special evening. It's relatively short notice because we were announced a short while ago that a certain person will be leaving, and we decided we would have this evening tonight. It's wonderful to see a full church, as it should be. And tonight, I'm going to speak to the lady about her time here. But before that, we met together a couple of weeks ago, and I said, you know, we should do this with some songs throughout that mean a lot to you. And she said, yeah, you know, that's fine. I said, this will be more like Desert Island Discs. But it won't be. It's just that we're going to use the songs that have meant a lot to her. And the first song is something that we're going to show on the screen. Now, I must get this right because I've written it incorrectly a couple of times. This is a song by City Alight, and it's called His Glory and My Good. When I was asked to look at this on the screen, I watched it, and then I watched it, and then I watched it, and I watched it. I think the words of this are special. And I hope you enjoy it as well. Please sit back. If you know this song and you want to join in with the words, please feel free. This is City Alight.
See him as I
See, you did know it. Tonight is not about the last 6 years. Tonight is about the last 14 years. When Nikki joined us 14 years ago as a curate, that was when I first met her. And we've been involved in some incredible things in this church together, along with all of you, over the last 14 years. And just seeing so many of you here tonight means to me how much she has meant to you. We're going to listen tonight to how she feels things have developed over the last 14 years. I'm going to interview her, and then at the end of the interview, a couple of questions for her husband, Mike, because they are a team, a partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to our vicar, Nikki Eastwood. Welcome.
Thank you, David. Is it on? There you
Yep.
go. That's our liturgical moment here, isn't it? When we sort of say, is this on? And also with you, everyone sort of replies.
That song, beautiful, beautiful,
Yeah,
fabulous
it's
word.
great,
Why did you choose that?
I think it's a great song. City of Light have become really significant to me, and I know I'm not the only one in this room who would say that. I think during lockdown in particular, there were all these songs that they were producing that really kind of spoke into our situation. We're going to be talking about lockdown and COVID later on. But City Light, they come from a church in Sydney, Australia. It's an Anglican church, therefore very sound. And they do things in threes, I think. So it's all about the Trinity. But they tell us of our reality, that our reality is tough sometimes. That verse about the thorn, about the trials we face. But they talk about our humanity being in Christ's humanity, but also the divinity of Christ that is supreme. And so those things, being able to get those amazing truths all in the same place of a song is an extraordinary thing. And also I have to say it's singable. Unlike my husband Mike, he's very musical. I'm not that musical. So sometimes I struggle with some of the settings for our worship songs. It's lovely to see Ruth Callahan's here. Now, she and I both go through the trial of trying to sing the carols, which can be a bit high, can't they, really? Whereas City of Light, I think, actually have a right kind of setting for my kind of voice. So that's why I've chosen it.
We're going to look over a lot of things, but we're going to go back to the beginning when you first came here. When you were offered a curacy here at St. Mary's, did you know anything about St. Mary's? I think you were living in Upton at the time. Had you, for example, met Graham Skinner before? And what were your thoughts on coming here? And this is 14 years ago.
14 years ago, so I'm going to have to get some notes out. It's a bit like doing an exam in yourself, isn't it, really? This is all quite tricky, really, so I'm going to really have to try and remember. I think when I was offered a curacy here, I was offered a very quick curacy, and I remember saying, St Mary's who? Upton where? I mean, Mike and I had been on the Wirral by that point, about 20 years. We worked in charity work and the voluntary sector, and so knew our way around a bit, but we had never been here. I have to say, I think I probably brushed shoulders with Les Parry. Maybe Mike had shared a guitar plectrum with him, and Anne-Marie Gillett, because we'd done some schools work around Christian assemblies and so on with some of the stuff that Anne-Marie was doing. So, but that will be about it, I think. And I didn't know Graham. As it happened, we were worshipping at Townfield Church, which was a church plant from St Andrews, Bevington. And, of course, Graham was a curate there, I now understand, at St Andrews. And we may have heard his name once or twice there. But, no, I didn't really know anything about here. Isn't that amazing? Because the thing about St Mary's is it's an extraordinary church in its reputation. A reputation that goes before a church is an amazing thing. It's an extraordinary gift in ministry and mission because people know of St Mary's. Well, we didn't. I think maybe we're spectacularly uncurious when it comes to other churches. But St Mary's is known, but we didn't know it. But having ministered here and served here for 14 years, I just really value that reputation that St Mary's has for some of the good things we bring.
When you actually knew you were coming here as a curate, had you been here then, or was being a curate and then you came here? Which, in other words, had you any experience of being here?
No, we didn't even do that mystery worshipper thing, you know, when you kind of sneak in the back and just kind of make sure that the lights are low. I mean, tonight's a perfect one to do that for, isn't it?
Yeah.
You kind of sneak in and kind of hide. No, we didn't even do that. So I think our first time here was when I came to, I would have been leading a service.
So it was a 3-year curacy, and then the opportunity came along to apply for the associate vicar's post. Was that a natural progression for you, or did you have to think long and hard about it?
I think it was a 2-year curacy. I think I was done quite quickly looking back. That was the way they did things then. I was reflecting recently that I've served under 3 bishops here in Chester. So Mike and I came to work for a church in Birkenhead. It was Michael Bourne. Some of you remember Michael Bourne. Had this extraordinary vision for bringing good news to tough places. And then, of course, it's Peter Forster, and he was the one who sort of said, "Oh, I think you can do a short curacy, Nikki. I think you've got this." So I think it was a couple of years. I don't know about a natural progression. But St Mary's is a wonderful place to be, and we've been fortunate in the last few years, I think, to see people trained here, people exploring, or vocation in all sorts of ways. And I've always said to everyone doing that, St Mary's will love you through that training. And because I'd had that sort of awareness, really, of the way that people put up with you, there's extraordinary patience in our congregations. Because being a curate is like being a trainee teacher or training in any way, really, is that you have to do your practice in front of everyone. So it's a bit like learning a musical instrument, but doing your scales in front of everyone. So you have to have a very, very patient group of people, and St Mary's is very loving and forgiving in that way. So it's a great place to train.
Did you find that being an associate vicar was slightly frustrating because of the limitations on what you were allowed to do?
I don't think so.
I'm thinking curate, associate vicar.
I don't think it was. I think it's a really good team here. Again, it's a wonderful church for building teams. And there's a good team, not just of staff, but of committed volunteers. And St Mary's doesn't work without volunteers really digging in and just serving in this amazing way. So you're part of a big team. I think that service is the key, and I think serving in mission in whatever role you have is really going to be the thing that you want to do in church. And if you get to do that here, so I got to do it as a curate and then as an associate and now as a vicar, you're just surrounded by great people. You get to work with great material at St Mary's, and I always say that. So it's actually, who wouldn't want to be an associate and serve in that way? And I think the other thing is that now I know what it's like being a vicar. It's quite different being an associate, isn't it? You kind of, it's a bit like still being in the sandpit. You can still kind of play a bit, whereas vicar, it's kind of serious, really, because all the decisions and responsibility end up with you.
And then moving on from that, your calling as vicar has never exactly been a 9-to-5 job, and it must often encroach on personal and family time. So how do you and Mike cope with unexpected parish issues that can occur at the drop of a hat? Because we never had the opportunity to ask you that, for you to respond to it. How has it encroached on your family life?
I mean, there's a reason why it's called a living. I think that's the first thing to say, is that it's not a job, it's a living. I mean, it is kind of 24/7. That isn't sustainable, really. So you need to breathe different oxygen from time to time. I mean, one of the best things to do is, if you get a knock on the door, is to send Mike Eastwood, really, to answer the door. So Mike would open the door with sort of that very charming sort of look of baffled incomprehension. Like, he doesn't even speak English, he can't work out what's being said, and says he'll pass the message on. So if any of you have been on the receiving end of that, I don't apologise. It's not a ruse, it's just the way that life is. But I think we've got better at maintaining boundaries. I think you talk about family time. So because I was ordained later in life, our children didn't grow up in a vicarage. So it's quite a different experience for them. They weren't clergy kids, if you like. But I think they got used to quite quickly the idea that actually your life is open at the edges. You know, that there are lots of ways in to a vicar, you know, and I think that's how we've kind of lived our life. And I think we had, some of you will remember, we had Natalia and Anicia. We had a Ukrainian family staying with us for a year. And our kids just thought, well, that's exactly what you would do. Why wouldn't you have people staying in the vicarage? So I think they get it. They might feel differently. When we get to York, they might actually want a bit more of the interruptions at our end rather than us constantly being with them. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Okay. I said at the beginning, we're going to do this slightly differently. It's like in 3 chunks as opposed to a first half and a second half. And in part 2, we're going to talk about the highs and the lows of your 14 years here. But to close this section, can you tell me if being appointed vicar here was a daunting prospect, or did it excite you, or maybe both? What were your thoughts at the time when you were appointed?
I think it's a bit like being curate in a way. I think you come to a place like this and you think, I just don't want to mess it up. I don't want to stuff it up. It's a really, really wonderful place to be, and you don't want to get it wrong. Yeah. And you don't want to mess with something that works really well. You're also aware quite rapidly when you come here of the people who've gone before you. I was fortunate in that I worked with Graham, who's a good training incumbent, generous with time and development opportunities. So I think I kind of saw how it could work, but as I say, you don't know until you are vicar how it's going to be. So I think it's always going to be daunting, but there's also something about the nature of call. I really believe that we all have a call upon our life. It's not just ordained people who have a call. I mean, vocation comes from the word vocare, which is to call out. And it's this idea of God's given you a song to sing that only you can sing. So it happens to be that for that moment in time, the place where I was supposed to be is here. So although it is daunting, you're excited by the prospect of leaning into what God's prepared for you to do. And I think that's the thing that I trust in, really. Yeah.
So, what have you chosen as your second song and why?
The musicians are just getting up. I just need to check why oh, yeah, I know why I've chosen
He will
this.
hold me fast.
Yeah, Dave's going, he will hold me fast, in that kind of way. It's He Will Hold Me Fast. A number of you will know this. I chose it for a number of reasons. I think it's a cracking song. But I think it's also really significant for me because it was the first song, I think, that we had on our first lockdown service. So when we couldn't meet in church anymore to worship, and when we went to camera and we all became TV stars, music, lights, action, and all that sort of stuff. And this was one of the songs we had in that first service. And then as we went through COVID, so many people that I was in touch with pastorally and around funeral ministry and so on were saying to me, you know, Nikki, it's one of those things that I do hold on to, is that song, He Will Hold Me Fast. I know I'm not on my own. And songs are so important. We learn our theology. We learn what we think about God through the songs, including carols. But this is one, I think, that we learn what we thought about God and his trustworthiness and faithfulness.
So the words will be on the screen. Please stand as you feel able as we sing together, He Will Hold Me Fast. We're now going to look at what I call some of the highs and lows of the last 14 years. And one event has to stand out because of its effect on all of us, and that's COVID and the pandemic. Looking back, how do you think we handled COVID as a church? And what are your personal memories of that time? And of course, did we learn anything from it? So talk to me about COVID.
Yeah, so COVID is sort of 2 years into the time I've been here. Can I just say I wasn't responsible for COVID. It had nothing to do with me, really. But we suddenly realised, didn't we? It sort of came on us very, very quickly that we were in the middle of something that was huge. And I think having a humility before that and realising that this isn't just about this setting that we're talking about church, it's about business, it's about health, it's about education, it's about family life, it's about social care, it's about justice, it's about our faith. You know, everything was touched by it, really. And we are going to be living with the effects of that for quite a while. So if you read about the last pandemic, that would have been, 1918, when we had Spanish flu. It took a long time for society and culture to begin to sort of get itself back together. And there were lots of challenges around that, of course. So what we're seeing is something that is about recovery and an ongoing recovery. And for some of us, COVID's going to be around a long time. It might be physical implications of what's happened to us, or it might just be that institutionally, just things are really tough for quite a while. And so I think that's the bigger picture. But then, of course, one of the things that we see in that time is how important community became, and relationships, what we learned about each other, how much we missed each other. How when we're prevented from seeing each other, it's part of who we are, is to want to be with each other. So it felt a very cruel set of circumstances for everyone that we were just cut off from that. And I think as a church, we did reorganise. I mean, I think our online services were brilliant. I want to say, and I've got some thank yous to say, if I don't cover you, you are covered elsewhere. But people like Peter Elliott and Rachel Schwan, doing a real shift in terms of being able to get us online. Remember Steph and Harry Worrell, helping out all our musicians, people who were really kind of digging in and helping us to get ourselves online. So there's something about adapting to that. But I think learning from it is actually about learning of the power, in part, of the local, what it means to be locally connected. And one of the things that we'll find as we go through this, it's those places where people trusted people to do things, to help each other, to respond pastorally. So all those people who did phoning and writing and taking things around to people when they could and leaving things on doorsteps and just saying, you're not forgotten, you're held, and being a family that carried each other. And I think those connections become more and more important, the kind of way in which we want to talk about serious things, we want to talk about things that are important to us. So I used to sort of come up from the vicarage, I used to come up and I used to ring the bell. I don't know if any of you remember that. I used to ring the bell and I used to talk to Betty Dean out there, do you remember? And she would say to me, Nikki, remember that phrase, when this is all over? Do you remember that phrase, when this is all over? And we never knew when it was all going to be over because it was going to last a long time. But Betty would say to me, Nikki, she said, thank you, you're ringing the bell, we know there's someone in there, that's a great comfort. She said, but, when it's all over, you won't have to ring the bell anymore, will you? And I said, no, probably not, Betty. And she said, and if you do, Nikki, can I help you with some bell-ringing lessons? You see, that's the comradeship of COVID, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's the kind of, we're going to support each other in this. We've got each other's backs. So I think, but it was an opportunity, I think, for us to recognise just how much goes on that is hidden. Any parents who were doing education at home, I hope that you appreciate the value of great teachers Anyone who sort of had a home delivery of food, those people who sort of just kept going. And of course, you know, the brilliance of our health service and just all that sort of stuff. I think for me, it was, some of it was actually really desperate. I did these minuscule funerals, you know, that time when we couldn't have people to gather, and that just seemed one of the cruelest things of all.
Yes.
And so I did tons of those, you know, and that was quite a bleak time, I think, and just endlessly sort of going up and doing funerals where people couldn't gather, and you couldn't, you know, your mask on, you know, everything was kind of just sort of prevented from showing any kind of emotion, really. You just couldn't show what you were feeling. So I think all of those kind of things are quite costly for people to come through, and I think we're still reckoning on that. But I think being aware that we learnt stuff as well. You know, we learnt stuff about each other, I hope, and learnt stuff about ourselves. I must admit, I sort of came out, it was always a transition time. Do you remember we went through those tier things? Do you remember the tiers? And we always seemed to be in a tier that didn't really work for us, do you know what I mean? And then Christmas got cancelled, didn't it? But underneath it all, I think the thing that I learned was actually faith is so resilient. It just keeps popping up. You cannot cancel Christmas because you can't cancel Christ. And the good news of Jesus being born to us and coming to us and saying that you matter to me and I'm here with you. So there were some good things about it, but I think it was tough, wasn't it?
It was, and I think we, in some ways, are stronger for it because we've come through it. And there were some highlights. I mean, every Sunday morning, I used to switch on the TV screen, and I used to say, "Where is Bridget Jones, our roving reporter, this week?" Because one week you're outside Chester Cathedral, the other time in front of the cranes in New Brighton,
That's right.
and then you're all over the shop. But it focused us on, because we weren't here, we were here. And, you know, the effort, I'm not just saying it because you made such an effort to not say, you know, oh, well, we'll get through it and then we'll carry on. We tried to continue in one form or another, and that's where the strength has been. You know, you led us through that period, and I know it wasn't easy for you. And you mentioned the funerals, and I went to a few of those when there was no more than a handful of people in the crematorium, and it's tough. It was tough, but you got us through that. And I think we all show our appreciation for what you did then, because it was important.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I think we worked out quite quickly, and it's something about being a church family, is actually, you know, hearing the names of people in prayers. You know, to be honest, you can go online and you can get, our musicians are great, but you can get better sung worship. Probably even the songs that you really like, you can probably find somewhere. You can get better preaching. But what you won't get, and that's what we realised, what you won't get is that sense of, I belong here.
Yes.
So hearing your name in the prayers, hearing kind of news of each other, I think that was a really important thing that we did, to say we belong together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, when you became vicar here 6 years ago, what was the plan you were working towards? And what has happened to enable the plan to work out? You know, what were you seeing that you wanted to get moving?
I do like your faith, David, that you think there was a plan. That's good. It's really good. As I say, you get to work with great material, really.
A cunning plan.
So there was a plan that emerged. I mean, if you've been here for a while, and if you've been there, you know, before those 6 years started, you'll remember that we were in the middle of a building project. So the wonderful sort of complex that we have over there wasn't finished. And we didn't have the money to finish it off either. And we didn't necessarily have a coherent view of what we were going to use it for either. It can't be only me who's now saying that in the confessional of Sundays at 7, which isn't Sundays at 7. So there were a lot of challenges in front of us. And you might also remember that it was quite a tricky time with the community. That not everyone was sold on what had happened. And that had been quite a wearing time. I think a lot of us were very tired. But I think the plan was to get the building finished. And here I do need to pay tribute, I think, to the faith building group, so obviously Graham Skinner, people like Peter Hinton, people like David Colwell, people like Andrew Banks, and I've seen Catherine's here tonight, and Alison Elliott, you were there as well, and Tony Halliday, people who really kind of stepped up and just said, we'll see this through. So I kind of stepped into that team. But we knew that we had to get the building finished and had to get the money and had to find a use for it as well. Some of you might remember Archbishop of York, Semptonu came. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And you know what they say about the royal family, wherever they visit somewhere, there's just the smell of wet paint, isn't there? It's just drying. I think that man probably had the smell of sort of drying concrete, didn't he? Because we hadn't finished it, but we knew that we needed something that says, actually, this is where we're going to emerge. This is where we're going to come from that sort of cocoon-like state into this amazing butterfly, which is all about resurrection and new life. And I think our plan was to finish, but I think my plan was that, and my prayer really, was that people would grow to love the building. Because there had been hostility and people had found it difficult and change is hard. But that with each event that was successful, and that might mean a baptism and a big sort of full Sunday service, might be a Sundays at 7, it might be just the way people use the building, that would be a blessing to the community and not a burden. And I think that was my prayer, that we would just have a succession of good experiences for our community. And I think we were beginning to do that. And of course, COVID hit us. But one of the things that COVID showed us is what a brilliant building it is. I mean, genuinely, I have sort of had a picture of an ark, really. That this was a place that was going to enable people to be restored and to recover. And I think we've kind of seen that in the way that the building's being used now. So I think that was the plan, such as it is, David, but thank you for your faith. And I think that idea that God's kingdom comes one by one, and that this was part of bringing the kingdom, that we were doing that together, and that we were going to be growing, and that people would be encouraged to experience the life that Jesus has encouraged us to explore here.
Interesting you mentioned John Sentiment, who was Archbishop of York at the time. I will never forget that day when he came here on the Sunday, and he spoke to the children about butterflies. And a lot of local people were invited to that, and we went down to the centre afterwards. And I did not know that the Roman Catholic priest from St. Joseph's had also been invited. Mm-hmm. And they shared the same colour scheme. John Sentiment went behind the screen dressed in purple, and he appeared in black. And I thought, goodness me, he's the quickest fast change artist I've ever seen in my life. And it wasn't, it was the guy from the Roman Catholic Church. I will never forget that. Not that that's got anything to do with this.
You see, right. I'm just wearing that look that Mike Eastwood has when he goes to the door. That sort of bemused, confused look.
Now, really, really, really serious. I must touch on this. Sadly, your dad passed away during your time here. And he was so very proud of you. He was the only person I knew who called you Nicola. Mm-hmm. That was a difficult time for you and for Mike. How did you cope with it? Because you still had a parish to run.
Well, I mean, looking back, and I'll talk a bit about the practicalities of coping with it, because I think it reflects upon church family. But looking back, I think, it's very much this idea of living. We live with things that we go through together, I was just remembering Chris Drake, and I think I've seen Pam in the chairs there. Chris Drake said to me, he's a PCC member, and he said to me when the building stuff was going on, it was really quite difficult. He said, the thing is, Nikki, that we can get this stuff done, if you do what you're supposed to do, which is ministry and mission, and if you're pastoring other people. So he's absolutely right in that, and that's why teams really work, don't they? But I think, so my dad was living with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and became progressively more unwell. But the thing about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's for my dad was it was quite a public sort of decline for him. And so a number of you will be going through this tonight. You'll be thinking about people that you're taking regularly for memory tests. That's the kind of experience we have, isn't it? So I would be taking my dad for a memory test. The first test, because I was naive, I would cram in the car. So I'd sort of say to him, okay, so who's on the throne? I know, it's cruel, isn't it? Fortunately, he didn't have to live through that period of many, many prime ministers that we've had in the time I've been here. Again, not my fault. But if you'd asked him that question, that would have been a bit unfair, wouldn't it? But so we would cram. But there's the kind of the time tests that you have to do, and you have to sort of show what 3 o'clock looks like on the clock. So he did that the first time, and then the second one, an hour hand had just fallen off. He just couldn't put the hands on. And then, of course, the third time we went, he just sort of said, "What's the clock?" No, you will know that. You'll know that sort of that frailty that is just so obvious to us. And it's one of the things we are living with in our society. It's something that we have to engage with and say, well, what's our response about that, really? And so I always knew I wasn't on my own with it, because this is a very loving church family. And so my dad was getting progressively more and more unwell. But people here allowed him to space out, as he did, when he was trying to kind of finish a story. They wouldn't finish the story for him. They were patient and kind. They would tell him who he was when he didn't know who he was, and where he was when he didn't know where he was. Now, all of that is actually a real thing for someone who's in public life. It's quite a hard thing, it actually sort of gets right to the core of who you are. But I've always known that this is a church family, and so that church family not just helped my dad, but also helped me. So you talk about calling me Nicola. Fiona Williams, I don't know if you're here, Fiona. She gave me some really, really helpful advice, because she was a great friend and pal to my dad. And she said to me, Nicola, because you would call me Nicola because she knew fewer and fewer people were calling me Nicola. And she would say, Nicola, just remember, you don't have to be right about everything all the time with your dad. That's a really helpful thing to be able to say to one another, is actually there are some things that you can just allow just to flow away and not kind of fight over that sort of stuff. But making good decisions about care is something that I think we are trying to take more and more seriously here. I think one of the things that happened to us after COVID was that we knew that health and faith, there was a really important connection. And I think experience of living with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and a number of us will know about that. Having a parish nurse, Lizzie Schwan, in that now, and actually saying, is there something we offer as a church family, as a community here of faith, that says we have good news about making good decisions around social care, and actually the kind of quality of life and the dignity of life. So I know that my dad had quality and dignity of life, right up to the end, actually. Yeah. And it was really hard for me to live it out loud. But again, that whole thing about this is a church family that loves you through things, I had to trust you guys with it. And I can't think of a better place to have trusted my dad. And so people were really, really brilliant to me. It wasn't just brilliant to my dad, but brilliant to me. Yeah.
Just to close this section, when you look back on the parish profile in 2017, you must surely feel that you've now ticked most of the boxes and left us in a good place. What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't looked at it since 2017, I've got to be honest. I don't feel I'm on top of my subject there, so can't quite remember everything that was on there. We have done a lot. By the grace of God, we have done a lot. Mike was saying something about someone speaking about the American election, when you could think about defending, what's gone before. Lots done, lots to do, lots to lose. So I think we have done a lot in this sort of 6-year period. I think there's lots to do because the kingdom is coming, and we want to see the kingdom come, don't we, in our lives. But I would add that by the grace of God, that there isn't anything to lose, because I think it's placed in God's hands. So I think we have done a lot, and I think the building is testament to that. But
So do I.
what I want to do, because you've cut out possibly my favourite question, I'm just going to add into that, because there was a question which was about what are your kind of standout moments, really?
Yeah.
And although I've talked about the building, I think for me it's always going to be, my standout moments are always going to be people. Always going to be people. So the privilege of being in people's lives at particular moments is an absolute gift. If any of you are having a nudge tonight about thinking, should I explore vocation in any way at all, that gift that we are given to be in people's lives at critical moments is extraordinary. So when I've had the privilege of seeing people who are caring for people at end of life, pray with great faith and courage for them, be attentive and gentle. All those things actually make a difference. When I think about Frank Hegarty's wallpapering at the vicarage, that's a standout moment for me. When I think of Dave Woods helping with baptizing, Steve Feltzberg up a mountain, and then helping to get all those people down whose shoes had kind of absolutely collapsed. When I think about Jürgen Klopp's smile, I know that's nothing to do with me, but that's a standout moment in my time. When I think about Alpha at all, and I think about Alpha and people coming to faith, and our confirmation services and our baptism services, they're standout moments, And I did promise that I would say this. And when I think about giving a Toblerone to anyone who gets married here, or anyone who has their marriage blessed, and we renew vows, whatever we do, just the grace of God to enable us to commit to each other, those are standout moments. I know we're going to talk about funerals later, but there are all sorts of things that are about people, and they will always be the things that I hold on to. However great the gig is, and it's a great gig here, it's the people that will always be the standout.
Well, I'm sorry for jumping your standout question. But
I'm not going to let you have that
Okay. Your third song, in case you can't find it in your notes, it's Be Thou My Vision. Why did you want to use that?
I think it's a belter. I think it's been used here. In lots of the things that we've done together. It's a real kind of gatherer. And it's a real kind of pointing towards, actually, in everything else that's going on, God, will you be the one who directs me? Will you be the one who sustains me? Also, when I came, one of the things that I've done probably certainly since I've been vicar, maybe a bit as an associate as well, is chosen music for 2 of our 4 services. It's quite a thing to do, And I remember someone, let's call him David Roberts, who would come up and say, Nikki, do we really have to have Be Thou My Vision again and again and again? So actually it's for David, really, that we're having it tonight.
Do you want to play this or what?
I do want to play it, yeah.
As you're able, would you like to stand as we sing the beautiful song, Be Thou My Vision?
Be thou my
Do you know what? I love that song.
You love it even more now, don't you? Really?
Being really, really serious, I want to talk to you now about the road ahead. But before we do that, we've said goodbye to some absolute saints in this church. You mentioned one or two before. Can you just reflect on that for a moment?
I mean, one of the things I think about serving at St Mary's is that you are just very conscious of those verses we read a lot in the Psalms, from generation to generation, the idea of passing faith on. And you realise that you stand on the shoulders of giants, really. So at the back of the church, there'll be the board. And, I'm fortunate in that I've, been able to sort of be in touch with Graham and Nigel Walker. One of the things for Nigel Walker, and I would phone him from time to time and we talk and pray. And I was able to say to Nigel, the fruitfulness of your ministry, of your serving here, is still seen. I still get to enjoy the benefits of that very faithful sowing. Roy Barker, Rob Shimwell. And so when you come to a number of the funerals that we've had over the last 2 or 3 years, you're just very conscious that people's lives have been about obedience and about following and about discipleship and fruitfulness. And it is an absolute privilege. It happens to be one that I've spent a lot of time in because that's just been the nature of the gig here. Is this still working? Do you want to change it? There you go. Is that okay?
No.
All right. And we'll have a funeral this week. Ruth Stonley's here. And we will contemplate a giant of faith in Terry Stonley, not just in terms of his physique, but just in terms of his stature. And I know a number of you have been in a small group around him. And so I think when we sort of contemplate these amazing saints, we take seriously resurrection hope. We take seriously the fact that they have gone to somewhere so much better, that they are fully well and they're fully healed. And so we preach resurrection hope. But we also know that we're the poorer for not having them around. And we know that and we feel that yearning. And it is part of being in this time between the new heavens and the new earth. We feel that pull. And we want to be together. We want to be united. It goes back a bit to the idea of COVID and lockdown. I think for me, again, the standout items really for me have often been around funerals when I see enormous courage and bravery of people who will come and stand here when the lectern's here and speak about someone that they've lost. And I don't know, I can't be the only one who sits there and thinks, oh, I bet we wish we'd known this earlier on, you know.
Oh, and
so I suppose that's sort of a little bit of an encouragement to each other to remember those things, to encourage one another in those things of faith that we really value in each other. Because this is a church full of giants of faith, people who pray, people who share faith,
absolutely,
people who have a passion for justice, people who are full of compassion for each other, and actually saying that now and hearing of those stories is really, really important, I think.
It's interesting, linked with this. When I was coming in this morning, your husband, Mike, was going past and I said, did you have a nice time away? He said, yes. He said, time with families is so important because you don't know how many times you will get. And I thought, you know what, he's absolutely right. You can't say, oh, well, do that again sometime. It's really, really important. As you know, I have said to you many times over the years, family first and those times out are absolutely crucial. So, recently an announcement was made that Nikki Eastwood would be leaving St Mary's and moving to a parish in the York Diocese. How difficult was that decision to make, and how much did family considerations come into play?
It was a hard decision. We've been wondering about what the right time is. And again, one of the things about lockdown and watching people here go through things and pastoring you a bit, I guess, in terms of that, when people coming and saying, Nikki, I've got a decision to make about where I'm going to be next, you know. And COVID made us think about who was important in our lives and our priorities, how we spent our time, how we spent our money, but how we spent our time with people that really mattered to us. And I think that made us think. And I remember, again, in those transition times when we were going between tears and all that sort of stuff. And I remember a certain yearning, a certain wistfulness, a certain sadness, really, that I couldn't go and see. We had a very new grandchild at that point, because I needed to be here. And so, you know, you're feeling that tug a lot. I think we've got to a point this year when, you know, frankly, the children are young enough to still like us. So, and as yet, it won't be relentless taxiing, but you know, it's a bit of that going on. But we had, it was the death of a good friend of ours. You know, I think, frankly, she was the best of us. That made us realise, really, we don't know how much time we have, and anything could happen at any point.
Yep.
So actually beginning to say, okay, God, if this is the moment, then let's do that. So I think, yeah, our children, our grandchildren, for those of you who don't know, we've got 3 children. Our 2 daughters are within about 7-10 minutes of each other in York, and they're married with 3 children, a 4-year-old, a 1-and-a-bit-year-old, and another 1-and-a-bit-year-old in the second daughter. So they're close to each other, and you know, they have all those things that you'll know about. You know, the kind of the relentless scheduling, trying to fit everything in, and there are lots of people who can do this gig at St Mary's, as you're going to find out when you know, pray that next vicar in. There's only one person who can really push the swings in the way that I do for those kids. And that kind of needs attention. And again, I think one of the things that perhaps lockdown gave us was that moment of reflection and actually just saying, okay, if we're praying people, if we're people who pray, bringing it before the Lord and just saying, what's important here? What are my priorities? So I think we've done quite a bit of that, and we think now is the time. The kids are a bit nervous, got to be honest. I think one in particular. But I think that because it's a big change, and also, I mean, I sort of reflected on the fact that when my mum and dad, they left Portsmouth, which is where I'm from, and they came to be with us because my mum was really unwell, and we couldn't make it all the way down to Portsmouth all the time. She was unwell, but we could help out. She was here. I kind of moved my parents, with their consent, up the country. So I think I can see myself now in my daughter's sort of reaction of thinking, gosh, this is quite a big thing they're doing. And it is. We've been on the Wirral 36, 37 years. Most of our married life has been here. We've had 3 kids here. So it is a big change. But I think the kids are up for it.
And I know you're kind of looking for maybe more perhaps balanced life in Yorkshire, because it's been a 24/7 job here. It's a big church. There's a lot going on. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're going to?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a smaller gig. This is a big gig here. You have to have an enthusiasm, an appetite, and a kind of passion for it here. You do anywhere, really. But York, it's a much more rural setup. So I think it's quite a lot of farmers. And I'm hopeful, you know, for maybe kind of having a donkey in the church at Christmas, maybe a camel, you know. So that would be great. Yeah, it's a smaller church. It's called St Mary's. That's good for me as someone who kind of just needs to be able to hold very few names in my head at the moment, because it's quite daunting. I mean, I've got to know probably over 400 people, you know, and then scaling it down, but thinking, will I be able to remember them and their dogs and their sheep and all that stuff? And then I'm going to be area dean in Easingwold Deanery, which is a pretty part of Yorkshire. Lots of lovely walking. I've said in the news sheet, it's 22 minutes from Betty's in York. So if any of you like a fat rascal, I've still got a very long A. I'm aware of that when I say fat rascal. It perhaps will become shorter, won't it, when I get to Yorkshire. But, you know, you're very welcome to come. You might be asking that in a minute. But it's within hailing distance of our kids, but also perhaps a little bit of distance so that we're not next-door neighbours.
Will you be getting some time out between here and there? And when is your installation likely to be?
I'm working with 2 dioceses, which is unusual because I haven't done that. I've only ever worked with Chester Diocese, so we're between 2 dioceses. I'm hoping for at least a month.
Good.
And I think I need that. It's been full on, as you say, here.
Because you never got that.
No, because I think because I went from associate to being vicar, it meant that I didn't do the kind of the break. So now it's quite a good discipline to just kind of stop and look around. And so the licensing, which is going to be done by the Archbishop of York, R. Stephen. I bet he won't want me to call him R. Stephen, will he? That's the 11th of November. Now, the 11th of November is quite significant, isn't it? It's 3 things happening on 11th. It's obviously Armistice Day, so peace will break out in St Mary's, Strensall, where I'm going to. It's the anniversary of the Church of England agreeing to a women's ordination. Woo! Okay, that was a bit lukewarm, guys. But also, it's the cusp of my birthday. So my birthday's on the 12th. So it's a great evening to be able to come. It's a tiny church, particularly compared to us. And guys, I really think people have been crashing the St Mary's Strensall website since I announced where I was going, because a lot of people have been putting a lot of traffic that way. I'm hopeful that there'll be some seats, but I know that it might be a bit short on space.
We'll have to be names in a hat.
Yeah, but I'd love to see you, but maybe not on the 17th of November, the first Sunday.
And we can come and visit you over the fullness of time.
And having done that route across the M62 so often, it is accessible. You know, we are nearby, and I'd love to see people. One of the things about being here 14 years is that you're not really parishioners, you're friends. And so those relationships, I hope, will continue because we've shared a lot together. Yeah.
Now, before we finish, I'd like to have a couple of questions for Mr. Eastwood, if he will go over to there.
Should we swap places?
No. We've got no.
We have to make. When we were in lockdown, I don't know if you remember, there was one Sunday service, the one service, where Mike sort of appeared. He sort of put his head in, and someone emailed me and said, "Who is that international man of mystery that sort of appeared around the corner?" So I think we need a full floodlight, if that's possible, and make sure that you're on the camera.
Do you know, I've quite enjoyed doing this job. Yeah. And I'll tell you something. In the 14 years that you've been here, you have always been a great support for this event, Sundays at 7. I know we get a lot of people. I know people enjoy it. But you have seen what it's done for many folk. And I appreciate that, and they do. You know, you've encouraged the things that we've been doing. So thank you for that. Mr. Eastwood.
Mr. Roberts.
How do you feel about moving away from Liverpool and moving to Yorkshire?
Yeah, it feels odd. It feels right, but it also feels strange. So as Nikki said, we've been here best part of 37 years. And over 37 years, you get to know a lot of people, and you put down roots and you build relationships. And I think one of the great underrated things in life at the moment is contentment. And so I think I've learned real contentment over the last 37 years here. And all of that's going to be in some ways disrupted. So the reasons for going are really positive, but there's also real sadness within all of that.
So will you be moving at the same time or a different time scale? And will you be looking for new employment, or is that sorted out? What will you do? Are you just going to see how things develop?
Yeah, it was interesting. This morning, Lynn Weston was preaching on Exodus 14, and really focused on verse 14. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. And that was a real challenge for me, because being still is not my default position, really. I always want to know what we're doing next. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And so we will move house together. All of that will be done. But I've kind of got 4 substantive things in terms of work. I've got Liverpool Diocese, Liverpool Cathedral, some stuff with the National Church and the hospitals in Liverpool. So the first 3 things, Liverpool Cathedral Diocese, National Church, they will all finish at the end of the year. So for them, I'll need to be reasonably present midweek. So I'll be around in work midweek, although weekends at the new home. So that finishes the end of the year. Hospital will finish probably next summer, so that'll be a bit more backwards and forwards. That's slightly less full on. And then beyond that, I don't know. So I don't have a new job to go to, and so I don't feel ready for retirement yet.
No.
And then you go through all that stuff around, so what do I want to do? Stuff I really want to do is be Arne Slott's first signing for Liverpool and play at number 6. Or I still feel I could open the batting for England. So I think those kind of things probably might have just missed the boat. But beyond that, I don't know what I want to do next. Okay. And so that kind of, you need only be still, for me is both an encouragement and a real challenge.
Final question. Apart from the football team, I know that you love Liverpool, the place. What will you miss about Liverpool?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious thing, and it's kind of corny, but it's corny because it's true, the obvious thing is we'll miss people. I know, despite my vicarage door face. I've really loved being here in St. Mary's. And it's odd being a kind of clergy spouse. So I get to go to church where Nikki goes. And so I've seen the outside of St. Mary's Strensall. But that's all I know. I've been outside Strensall. And you take all of that on trust. And so I feel unbelievably fortunate that God called Nikki, and therefore, through Nikki, I came to St. Mary's Church that I just love being part of. So I'll miss here. I'll miss people at work. I'll miss... I'm not a big cathedrals guy, but I am a Liverpool Cathedral guy. And there's just something... my memory of Liverpool Cathedral is you walk in and the sky's always blue. I've just got the cathedral etched with blue sky behind. And the thing about Liverpool Cathedral is it's a real ego-shrinking place. And so what we're trying to do, we've got these various statements, and the final statement is we want people to encounter a God who knows and loves them. So what we're trying to do is evangelistically reach out to people on behalf of a God who knows and loves them and draw them into that relationship. But Liverpool Cathedral, you can't be a big personality in Liverpool Cathedral. It's just too big. And I find that kind of humility side of the cathedral really, really striking and really resting. So I'll miss that. And I'll really miss the Scouse accents. I don't speak as some of the kids, particularly Jess and Ben, they grew up as kind of full-on plastic Scousers. So there's a twang, but I will really, really, really miss.
And the sense of humour.
And the sense of humour. And you know where you are in Liverpool, don't you? You know what you're dealing with. There's no messing. So all of that. And the challenges of the place, but also the positives of the place. So, yeah, it'll be big wrench.
Thank you. Nikki, it goes without saying, it says here, but it really does. It goes without saying, we're going to miss you. We're going to miss you both greatly, but we wish you every blessing for your journey ahead. And we thank you for all that you've done for us, every one of us, during your time here. God bless you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Nikki Eastwood. Now, you're going to close in prayer for us. I think the best thing to do is if you will close in prayer, and then we'll sing the final song, which is going to be "Yet Not I, but Through Christ in Me." So before you finish with prayers, why was that? Why that choice?
Again, it's City of Light. I think they just write brilliantly, and I think they tell us these amazing truths about who God is and who we are, and the hope that is always there. You know, one of the things that we've learnt, I hope together, is holding on to the hope of Jesus Christ. That he has a hope for all of us, and he has a purpose and a plan. And it's not our strength that does anything. It's the strength of the Lord Jesus at work in us. And I think we've seen that time and time again. So that's why I've chosen it.
Again, just before you finish, just to let you know, please don't dash away. If you can stay, we've got tea and coffee in the building, which I hope you will stay for, and a chat. And if you want to come and have a word with Nikki or Mike, that would be great. Sundays at 7 comes back next on the first Sunday in October, when our guest will be our church warden, Ken London. So please make a note of that in your diary. We'll sing our final song shortly, which you might like to stand for as you are able. But before then, Nikki.
So we had that question about standout moments. One of the things that is absolutely central to the life of St Mary's and the Centre is our prayer and our commitment to mission links and partners throughout the world. There's always a standout moment when we have a mission link and partner who comes and speaks to us about what they've been doing and how they've seen God at work in these amazing places and in amazing ways. A number of you will know of our link with the Rocha. One of the standout moments for me was having time with Miranda Harris, who a number of us I know will feel that we lost too soon, but it is all in God's plan. And recently, I think her and her daughter, they put, so Jo Swinney, her daughter, put together some of Miranda's writing around hospitality and welcome. And we've tried to do that here with hospitality and welcome. We've said we want to be generous in our welcome, we want to be hospitable, we want to be warm, and we want to invite you into God's love wherever we can. There's a prayer from the book, and it reminds me of something that I was praying as we were coming out of lockdown, and just praying, Lord, would you give us a vision for a bigger table? Because we want to be sat next to people that we don't know yet, and we long to find out more about. So this is a prayer for a bigger table, and a prayer about being around God's table, but all of us tonight are invited to God's table. Big-hearted God, you have set a table with places for all of us. You are inviting us to sit and eat and make ourselves at home, even though you know our manners are terrible and we're liable to grab and gobble. Lord God, you are not worried by my neediness. You will feed us generously, as you will those who dine with us, until our fear of hunger leaves and we become satisfied and full of your peace. Thank you for your welcome. Amen. And before we sing, let's say the words of the grace to each other if you know it. If you don't, just listen to the words and then say amen if you agree at the end. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.